They went to Wellington, and Ben got a degree in commerce, and at the same time, Chloe got a degree in design. Ben then went shepherding in the Hawke's Bay for a while, and Dairy NZ, you'll be happy to hear this, but he saw a Dairy NZ Let's Go Dairying ad on TV, and he rang the phone number and spoke to a very enthusiastic dairy farmer. And from there, we'll zoom into what they're doing today. Today, Ben and Chloe run 5 dairy operations, which they're in charge of. They have share milking or share equity in the stock and in the farms of some of these operations, and Ben and Chloe will tell you a bit more about that. And as I said, they've got 3 children in high school, and they're still only 37. So they're definitely your classic overachievers. So I'll ask Ben and Chloe, after I've introduced Hayden, to talk about the bit in the middle. Hayden and Robyn put an apology in, she can't be here today. They too are, Hayden too is from the North Island, and they, funnily enough, also have 3 daughters. When I talked to Hayden and Robyn at their place, names like Al and Sharon Rain, Mike Murphy, Will Grayling all came up, all part of their trek to where they are now. They also have farm ownership. They bought a sheep property which they've converted to a dairy farm, and funnily enough, part of that property now has some of Pete and Emma's yard in it, which they got from Pete and Emma when they were doing some work here. And they also lease 730 hectares of dryland property, which they run a beef fattening operation on. So without any further ado, I'll ask Ben and Chloe to just give you a brief rundown on what they've done to get to where they are now. Thanks, Ben.
Okay, so thanks for that over-generous introduction. It probably all started out for us, and for me, dairying. I had a passion as a kid, growing up in a rural area, but not, I suppose, having a family farm to come to, but around a lot of farming families, and so always had a passion for that. And after university, went back shepherding. Chloe and I had a daughter relatively young, and so that I suppose stepped me into action that at that point that I had to step up and provide for my family, and struggled at that time to see an opportunity for us to, I suppose, move forward in the sheep industry without land, and the Go Dairy campaign of the past came up, and I rang the number, and as he said, I spoke to a dairy farmer, which was really awesome, and someone who told me that the opportunity is there. My old sheep and beef boss actually said to me, if you go dairy, you'll put your brain on the shelf and never use it again. I've since been back to talk to him and told him that the brain has been used. But so from there, I suppose we've had started with some really good people along the way. Got a job with some really good farmers, and learned from there, from the bottom dairy assistant, and all the way up. And I suppose one of the things along the way, right from the start, was that I learned from watching other people, is that along the way to get ahead with equity, you can't just do the day-to-day, you have to have a side hustle. And so for us, that was rearing calves on the side. There has to be something else to get you to kick on, and a skill that I was learning daily. And well, Chloe's reared thousands and thousands of calves over the years since we went into dairy farming, but all the way along, that's been a common theme, is raising our own stock from nothing and going out there and using whatever we could to gain equity from that. Moving along from there, I've had the ups and downs, and a lot of people come to me today and come to both of us and say, oh, equity partnerships, how do you do them? We've seen the bad and the good. I'm happy to be bluntly honest. We came to the South Island, went into a large-scale equity partnership, didn't set it up right, it all went wrong, and we left there after 4 years with nothing. We entered into that situation, had a lot of stock that we'd grown along that time, and it was gutting to walk away, but at that point, I'll be honest, I probably was a couple of days away from exiting the dairy industry and never being in the dairy industry again. I was pretty burnt out and hammered, and Chloe sort of said maybe enough's enough. And to me, and I'd agreed at that time, and a friend of mine who farms up in Ashburn, Liam Kelly, he rang me one day and he said, is it the situation you're in or is it dairy farming? Just be sure it's dairy farming that you're falling out of love with and not the situation you're in. And at that point I sort of circled back and thought, no, dairy farming's still got the opportunities and let's give it another crack. Again, just through networks, which I think a lot of people will, and I'm sure all the panel will agree, networks and getting out and talking to people, and it's a great industry. I managed to get a contract milking job on the 28th of May in Waimate, just before we're about to leave back to the North Island, and I suppose for us that opportunity has grown into quite a successful situation, which we'll be forever grateful for. So we still are in partnership and contract milk for the Pauls, the two brothers, and they had a death in the family and needed to step back, and I came in at the last minute, and that was their first ever time having contract milking. And one thing I went into there knowing from my history was that, and I think it's important for everyone going into contract milking, is that I went into it with a mindset that if the farm owner wanted me to do something in some way, as long as it didn't affect my bottom line of my share milking business directly, then I'd do it. If he asked me to turn every cow upside down, flip it on its back and milk it, I'll do it. And I think that was, he was learning, for the people out there thinking about contract milkers, there's the give and take's really important, and his, probably Quinton's wife was really important in that situation, and managing the fact that, if you want a contract milker on your farm, you have to give and take and give both people opportunities to grow together. So from that, to keep it short, like every year along the way, we continued the side hustle again. We managed to get our KiwiSaver out of KiwiSaver, turn it into a small lifestyle block that gave us some agricultural land to rear calves. That was, some people may think, and it's a common thing, Peter talked about obviously this morning about making sure you do look at all those small things, and so people would say to me, why are you wasting your time with 30 or 40 calves? Why are you wasting your time with these little gains? And just do what you do and don't do those extras. But those extra side hustles along the way have helped us hugely. We've also always had along the way in our share milking businesses free cash, and I suppose the free cash that we can use along the way to put into these assets to gain, to have something that would capture inflation was always an important thought of mine. And so as we've been growing along the way, we've had a couple of lifestyle blocks, we've done subdivisions, stuff that's completely outside of farming along the way to help, and that's helped us to get to that next stage. So with those two brothers who we've still share milk today for, we've over the last 5 years purchased 3 farms with them, and again, I suppose the key to that is right from the start, I've had key advice from professionals. So when I first started, a lot of people would say having a relationship with your bank wasn't that important anymore. They revolving door, bank managers come with the wind, but what we've found is that that's been very important, and the banks will support you to grow in this industry as long as you do what you say you'll do. And so by constantly making sure that we were all over our numbers and that we could hit what we've told them on a piece of paper we're going to do budget-wise, meant that every time that we asked for more money along the way, we had that track record, and if we wanted to push a bit harder, that we could do it. Also, that relationship with the bank, but also with our business partners, and getting, I suppose, what's allowed us to keep growing is good staff, and treating them fairly and bringing them along on the journey, but also I suppose setting up those equity partnerships properly. So we always start them, and it's cliche, but we always start them at the end. So how do we exit? if this all goes pear-shaped with the people, how do we exit in? And we always try to set that up fairly. And I suppose as well on that is that when we've set those equity partnerships up, it's mutually beneficial for both my business partners and myself. Their access to capital has given me opportunities, and my work's given them opportunities to equally return on those assets.
Look, I'll go, that's fantastic, thanks Ben. I'll go to Hayden now, ask him to tell us his story, and then we'll effectively know some story of all our panellists then, and then we can ask the questions. So Hayden, if you could tell us how you and Robyn got to farm ownership, and just talk us through your trip from, being a North Islander guy without a farming background to farm owner now with a large dairy property and a large block that you're running, leasing as well with beef cattle.
Well, I guess we'll start by telling the truth is that I'm actually from South Westland, not North Island, but it's the right job. So spent 8 years as a furniture maker when I left school. Spent 3 years doing it in London, and on my way home just sort of realised I was sick of being inside looking out, so I jacked up a job welding up rotary dairy platforms for 6 months when I come home. And is that better? Can you hear me right now? And then just got talking to farmers, and I'd also Oamaru been standing on Monaco and looking at all the fiberglass floating on the water and realised that there's probably not a lot of shortage of money in the world. It's just that I didn't have it, and I wanted it, And so my first question to my new dairy farming boss was, "Can I make $1 million dairy farming?" And he said, "You'll make much more than that if you do it well." So I was hooked at that point, and so I said, "Well, how do I do it?" And so green as anything, had no farming experience at all, and spent every second week I'd go down to his house for a couple of hours and just ask question after question. And he sort of told me about share milking and how you grow, and so in my second season with them, he paid me in 5 calves. And at the same time, I started to do a diploma in agribusiness, and I learned about assets and equities and liabilities, and never knew anything of this before. Never had any financial management that was anything to talk about, and so started to use my calves as equity to buy more calves, and then when they became heifers, I leased them to the farm owner. After 6 years, I was then working for Alistair and Sharon, luckily enough, and that first farm I worked on was sold, and the farm owner sent me a cheque for all my cows, which was sold with the farm for $90,000. He blew it up for a big cheque, and I thought I'd won the lotto. And I'd met Robyn, my wife, at this stage, and we actually met at ITO, so we're sort of products of the dairy industry as well. And then Robyn went off to university and did a BCom Ag, and if I was the horsepower, she's the direction. She's very accurate and precise, but I just won't take no for an answer. I just want to go 100 mile an hour all the time. So it's probably a good combination. And so Alistair and Sharon taught me about the accuracy of finances, the why. Why do you graze your pasture to 1,500? Why do you look after your herd so well? Why do you get out of bed and have good attention to detail? After that, I used that 90,000 to buy, and you probably wouldn't do this today, but I brought 90 after-quarter calves off people I knew very well, and then I paid a couple lump sum to rear them for us. Well, Robyn and I went off overseas for 6 months and travelled together. Finished my pilot's licence, did the coast to coast, and came home. We did a manager's job for a year, and then found a 350 cow 50-50 job. I guess when you're really hungry, you don't really know about risk. You just push the boat out sometimes. So I went off and applied for the job, handwritten the application. 1 month after the application, I hadn't heard anything, so I rang the farm owner, and he apologised for not getting in touch, but they'd already chosen their top 3 people they wanted to interview. And I said, "Well, best of luck. I hope you have a good season and you get the right people for your job." And so he rang back that night and said, "Look, I've been through and I found your CV. It was on the bottom of the pile. just didn't think it had a lot in it. He said, but how'd you like to come down for an interview? And so I went down for an interview and within 2 days had the job. So then I had to go and find some cows, which I went and found with my 80 in calf heifers and 10 grand in the bank. And then I rang the bank and told them what had happened. I said, we need to get some funding to make it all work. So with 18% equity, we went 50-50. And then that was just on the back of the GFC. And it was the share milking job was, it was a 110 hectare farm with a 28 side herringbone, and it had some people that had been there for 11 years and probably hadn't done it the justice that it needed. So there was a bit of fixing to do, but one thing I've never done is shy away from a challenge or hard work. I'll get up, at 4 o'clock happily every day if I knew it was going to make a difference to my long-term goal of making my $1 million dairy farming. And so we just chipped away over time, and then the farm owner had brought 60 hectares next door, and we managed to, I said, what are you going to do it? He said, we'll just do young stock and silage. I said, what if we milk off it? And he said, can we do that? I said, well, we've just skinned it out for winter, surely we can milk off it. So we went and leased a heap of cows. I rung friends and family and said, I need 30 grand, I need 40 grand, I'll buy some cows, I'll lease them off you at 8% on the first right of purchase in 2 years. And then the payout slowly went up and up and up, and by the 24th of October I think we were 528 cows and running through this little 28 side herringbone. And so eventually the farm owner gave us some of his crop and paddocks, and we were 800 cows after 3 years. So season 4 we were 800 cows, 50-50. Season 5 we were $2 million in equity from 80 half-quartered calves and 10 grand in the bank. And so, much like the old mate here, I was just keen to buy animals and graze roadsides, anything that I could turn $1. Once I learned about this equity growth, and I just made it, Mike Murphy had said, get good with numbers, do numbers like this. And so I would just learn how to look at something and instantly figure out the return on equity I could get, what was my growth and what was my time span. And I'd do it on vehicles, I'd do it on animals, or if someone telling me they had a hobby, I'd do it. Just to get really good with numbers. And I think that was something I was never very good at, but I knew the value of it. So we went and brought a farm without equity. That year the payout went to $3.90. Bank manager says to me, well, I don't know what you're going to do. And so I went off and we put a heap of fodder meat in, and we got through. We made a $16,000 loss, I think, overall. And the bank manager said, well, I don't know what you did, but you did very, very well. And so we ran a very similar system to what Pete is doing here on the farm. Very just focused on pasture, 450 kgs of cows, and just controlling costs. And that's what got us through that payout. And then from there, the payout went up, and we just went on the other side. We've since developed the farm, and just coming to grips with trying to get the farm to grow enough grass on the back of the conversion. And that's about it. I guess our strengths are probably budgeting. Probably what's helped with this.
No, look, thanks guys. You've got the background to everyone on the panel now. You know roughly where they've come from, but I'm sure there's plenty of questions. Look, I'll start the ball rolling. Twice, I think you guys had to talk to bank managers, and outside their normal parameters, they decided to lend you money. And I think you touched on it, Ben, and you talked about it a bit too, Hayden. Can you tell us why they did that? And actually, in both cases, it was ASB, I think, who happened to bank me as well, so there's a good plug for our sponsors. But talk about why the banks backed you when you were outside the parameters of what they would normally bank.
I suppose it comes back to what I touched on earlier, is that in the early days when they backed me, I knew my numbers. When they came to talk to me, it wasn't a foreign budget done by somebody else. I knew every line in my budget. And then building that history and that continued history of doing what you'd say, then they can trust what you put in front of you, because there's plenty of, I suppose, outside of parameters deals that if you crunch the numbers, you might not quite have the equity to do it. But if your performance is there, and if you've got a track history of delivering on that performance, then they're more likely to trust what you're putting in front of them.
Hayden, similar.
Yeah, I started dairy farming at 26, and just was in a hurry, and so to get where I wanted to go, I knew I had to really discover my weaknesses, what I was really poor at. And one of them was financial management, and that was probably the big glaring one. So I was never prepared to take no for an answer in order to get my goal, and so I just got on Excel and just learned Excel inside and out, and I bought Cash Manager in my second year of dairy farming because it was going on some deal, and just learned how to use that, and just learned myself, taught how to do budgeting. And so when it came to the point that we had to ask for this money from our bank manager, the first bank said no, so we went to a different one. And the guy, the bank manager sitting there, I can still see him sitting there, and so Robyn was working with Dairy NZ, and he turns to Robyn and said, "You cannot leave your job. You are not allowed to have kids at this point, you must work." And I just said to him, "Yeah, we will make this work. I 100% tell you, we will definitely make this work." And we had Excel spreadsheets, we did sensitivity analysis. We said, if it goes to this is what we're going to do. We had plan X, Y, and Z. And I think again that we left a no answer, that no way to say no was probably our option.
Actually, another question I asked when I visited these guys, and I'll ask it of Pete and Emma too, but I'll start at the other end so Pete and Emma can get their thoughts together. What's one of the best things you've invested in that didn't cost you a lot of money? And I think, Ben, you talked about the Dairy Industry Awards as your answer. So maybe you or Chloe could talk on what the Dairy Industry Awards did for you, and at very little cost.
Yeah, well, I suppose quite a long time ago, I got involved right early on, got involved with the Dairy Industry Awards and just in the dairy trainee sector, and met a lot of people that were far cleverer than I was at that time, and I was young, and just absorbed different farming systems, different farming ideas, and people that to me at that point as a young farm assistant, I was in awe of these people that owned thousands of farms and big operations and were highly profitable. And I suppose coming back to in that is right from that point, similar to Hayden, is that for some reason chasing wealth creation was something that spun my wheels, and so it was hearing other people's ways and ways of doing stuff like that.
And Hayden, I think when I asked you, you had just said that you'd been to your second mark and measure, and the first mark and measure was fantastic, but you wanted to recap. So obviously that's something you felt was really valuable, and again, not terribly expensive.
One of the best courses I think you'll ever do if you're in the dairy industry and you run your own business. I don't think enough people go to it, but I think for me the real founding bit was it. It's hard to visualise, to picture where you want to be. Farm ownership really wasn't my goal. It's my wife's goal. I just wanted lots and lots of money, so I could fund my habits of adventure. And I'll be honest about that. So it's Robyn's farm. I'm the farmer's husband. And so, for me, we did a progression in business course with Lydia Ryan, and she got us to sit there and it's not for everyone, but it said shut your eyes, and she talked us through your house, like what does the inside of your lounge look like, and it was a real visual process. And then when you come out of the house, turn around and look at where the house is it on a farm, if it is, what are the animals, and that helped me develop a real picture of what I wanted my life to look like. I then went and found that picture on the internet, and it was Mount Pizer Station was for sale at the time, and we printed off in the Wrightsons, and we printed off in an A2 and laminated and put it on the wall. And without a word of a lie, if you take a look at my farm right now and you put that next to it, the two of them almost look identical. So for me, that was gave me a real something to point at.
And Pete and Emma, is there anything you've felt that was relatively cheap but was a fantastic investment?
Yeah, I don't know about cheap, but doing the ag degree at Lincoln, I think like the best tool I probably learned from that was like how to analyse an investment with like an IRR, do like a 15-year projected cash flow, and then what sort of IRR that spits out, and just means like you can dream up all these ideas, and then you've got a way to actually see if they will provide a return. And then the other thing that I've always found interesting was just like the power of like compounding interest, and like the rule of 72. So if you want to double your money, get a 10% return, it takes 7 years. Just the power of that.
Now, we're looking for questions from the floor, so please, if anyone's got a question, put your hand up. But while we're waiting, perhaps, look, you touched, Ben, on, I think a lot of these young people see people up on stage and think, you know, it was all plain sailing and everything well, but you touched on it, Ben, and Chloe, you had quite a rough entry, shall we say, into the dairy industry, but you bounced back on it, and when you spoke to me the other day, you said it's probably one of the best things that ever happened to you because of the learnings that you got from it. So perhaps you could touch on that, and then I know, Hayden, you were much the same with basically spreading yourself too thin and probably not having the people in the right places. But if you could start and just tell us about that failing then and what you learned from it, and just so young people know that it's never ever all plain sailing.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, we put what we thought was a massive amount of our life into building to that point, and I was, I was chasing bigger, and it was a large scale operation on, tough farming land, and I was young and probably naive, jumped in, big hours, and I was lucky to have Chloe. We had young kids, had all three of our daughters there. Chloe actually went into labour with our third one while our house was semi-burning down, because the staff member in a power cut had decided to light a fire in the lounge. That was all part of the fun and games of it. But I suppose financially, the now I look back, although it, at the time it didn't look good, the learnings that we got from that exposure to large scale, to different farming systems, probably some of the financial don'ts, and the learnings around making sure that at that point, making sure that we knew our numbers. So before there, we were probably it was all just out there, just working hard, doing large hours, thinking, it was off the back of the dairy boom. This was easy. You just, everyone can do it. Just do more numbers at that point. And it sort of, it gave me that time to realise that you need to know those numbers, and you need to be reviewing them lots. And so there was heaps of life lessons from that.
Hayden?
I think the biggest thing I've learned about myself, I'm heavily critical of myself in order to get the best out of myself, but is balance. I'm driven by balance. I have to have time off doing things that aren't farming. So I love flying. I think I brought an airplane before I brought a farm, but I love doing multi-sport, triathlon, that sort of stuff. And when we did the conversion and we were still sheep milking and we had the lease block, I sort of had a really good team at the start, and then it sort of started to get the speed wobbles as you change people. And I stopped doing all the things I love doing off farm, and it was a long-way trip to Nowheresville, really. And so once we identified what was happening, we pulled back and we said, right, well, we don't need the sheep milk job, we'll just move on to a farm. Simplified life, focus back on the kids, brought in some of the off-farm fees which are essential to my happiness, and away we went again. So you have to make sure we don't do it again.
And Pete and Emma, have you got a similar tough time? I'm sure most people do in your dairy journey.
Yeah, I don't know about tough time. I think maybe making the sacrifice of living in the South Island. Emma's family's in the North Island, my family's in the North Island. Seeing the opportunity down here, and you sort of got to be willing to move, I guess. I'd much rather be down here with the growth we're getting at the moment than up in the Waikato with the growth they're getting at the moment.
Any more questions out there? Look, I've got another one if they're not coming, but I'll just lost my train of thought there for a moment. Now, I know, Hayden, you have an advisory board. Could you tell us, and I'm sure that the others do probably as well, but maybe not as official as yours, do you want to just tell us a little bit about how that advisory board works and what benefit you think it gives to your business?
guess I am answerable. Robyn and I are answerable only to ourselves because we went down the track of sort of shareholding and sometimes that's, you know, when you've got distractions like family and stuff, it's hard to stay on your focus of what you committed to 5 years ago. And so for me, I said to Robyn, especially for myself, I probably get distracted quite easily sometimes. So I needed some professionalism in our business still. And so while Robyn's very professional, we're still both very distracted with 3 young girls and sport and stuff. So we asked three very respected people, our first bank manager, who's now our accountant, our consultant, who's known us for over 10 years, and our another bank manager who's very well respected, and he's an ex-bank manager. So we meet with them at the moment 3 times a year. The meetings, really the first couple of meetings are just about them asking us really awkward questions to get the best out of what do we still want to achieve, where are we going to be in 10 years, how much money do you want? If I'd said something like 4 million, they'd say why? I'd say, well, because it's 4 million. They'd say, but why? And so it was good. It was uncomfortable, and when I'm uncomfortable, that's when someone gets the best out of me. Or sorry, I get the best out of them. So, like a bank manager, an accountant, if they or a consultant, they sit there and smile and tell me I'm doing a good job, they're fired. They've got to make me swerve and challenge me, and so that's what the board does. It puts me out of my comfort zone, and makes me refocus and go back to the things that I don't normally graduate towards, like budgeting and stuff like that. To me, once you get busy, so that was probably the whole drive, just to sharpen the pencil again.
And Pete and Emma, I'll come to you, but I'm sure you've got maybe not an advisory board, but trusted mentors in your business. Obviously, your brother and parents, perhaps. But if you could just talk us through, people that you go to when you've got questions or when you want to be held accountable.
Yeah, we don't have a very formal process to do it. Definitely on the phone to my brother a lot, to Emma's discussed. Run things past Richard and Steve and neighbours, and that's pretty much how I do it.
And Ben and Chloe, what about yourself? You're involved with your partners, I'm sure.
Same. Got a really good relationship with our equity partners, and so discuss, almost an advisory board, discussing all the time, every day. But also just, I suppose the one thing the dairy industry's got that allows you to discuss amongst fellow farmers, and it's something that I suppose that I always look at, which was awesome about our industry, is that we sell one product other than our cow-cows, but we sell all our product to the same place for the same value. So the transfer of information and the opportunity to learn from days like this, and for people to be open, there's no challenge of trying to hold your secret squirrel behind you or trying to rip your mate off on a stall hen. That's probably the greatest asset that we've got in this industry, for people to be able to use that as almost like a wide advisory board in your business.
Couldn't agree more. So on that note, there's a good chance if you've got any questions out there, Will.
This one's more towards Ben and Chloe, but anyone can contribute. Could you just talk about a few of the differences you've experienced through share milking and an EP structure, like behavioural differences, or how you've had to approach it differently, if at all, and if there's any limitations, or what you find better about either scenario?
Yeah, so we've been through fixed rate contract milking, and then that's been upgraded to lower order along the way. 50-50 share milk for one of the brothers, because it was a smaller farm. That was the start of growing the capital. I suppose, so that was quite clear cut contracts, and set rates and responsibilities, and we made sure everyone knew where they stood to start with. With the equity partnerships, what both of us have been really lucky with is that when we set them up, there was clear, not just exits, but clear reasons for setting them up. So I've been lucky enough that my business partners have helped me into it, and so I suppose when we sat down, they said to us, we want to help you into a farm, and that was our goal, was a farm, and so they came in, but they allowed us to to have a buyout clause on them throughout that, and so there, a lot of people would say, oh, why would they want to do that? They're making a great return on their money, but there, originally I went to the Laurel job and said that I wanted to buy cows off him, and and an advisor that he had at the time said, why do you want to split the pie? Why not grow the pie? And so it was at that point that we went out and bought another farm together, and allowed me to grow, and he helped me. And I suppose it was really good to have the farm owner on board, and so it had to be a win-win. So he said, look, I'll help you into a farm, but I want to make a bloody good return on the way. So prove to me that I'm going to make a good return, because I'm going to go and borrow it against my own farm to put in. And for him, the art of double leveraged on his own farm, put the money into the EP, the EP leverages, and effectively in his eyes, he's made over the last 2 or 3 years 14-15% return on his money, and he's borrowed it for 7. So for him, he's won, but he's also had the I suppose the enjoyment of seeing us be able to get into our first farm and grow from there.
Okay, we'll start at this end, but we've talked about growing equity. I mean, Ben and Chloe, you bought some houses and subdivided and stock, and Hayden stock for you as well. And Pete, there's opportunities still in the industry. So you're a young person wanting to grow their equity. What's the best way to do it? Is it buy a house, or buy some cows, or a combination, or what would you advise?
No, every situation's probably different, isn't it? Buying cows can be good, I think, but it also ties you a bit as well. It's hard to sell cows sometimes. I just look at the return on equity, what you think you can get, have a clear exit strategy.
Hayden, do you want to? Still opportunities there, isn't there?
Of course there is, 100%. Yeah, there's always opportunities. It's just whether you're prepared to turn an obstacle into an opportunity. There's obstacles everywhere that you look, if you can see them and turn them around. But I sort of agree with this. If you're in the industry, then perhaps even starting with 10 beefies and asking your farm owner if you can buy 10 mere beefies and pay for some grazing, just learning about the cash flow and how that works and perceived or put some return on equity on it, so you can, even if it comes in not as high as you wanted, you're still learning how things work along the way. Depends what stage of life you're in. Some people here probably need to buy 200 beefies, some 5. So, but yeah, just start. Just even if it's with 5 animals, just start. Just challenge yourself to set a budget, put them in some sort of system of where you expect a rate of return, and have a go. And 5 will soon become 500. It always blows me away how fast things happen once you start. I'll never have guessed or believe it. I still don't believe it today.
Yeah, and Ben and Chloe, you can accommodate it, because I know you've done well with buying lifestyle blocks big enough so Chloe does all the calf rearing, and then making money when you flip the lifestyle block. So you're sort of winning twice. And you're big on looking outside the dairy industry perhaps for opportunities. So if you want to expand on that, Ben or Chloe.
Yeah, so to touch on, certainly plenty of opportunities out there within the dairy industry still, and one thing that I've always said to young people and staff that have been trying to grow is that there's not really many other industries in the world where you can create something that's passionate to me, generational wealth that can go for the next generation and the next generation from absolutely nothing. We've started with nothing, we've lost it all, we've started again from nothing, and then hopefully now we can hold on and grow. But yeah, so investments outside, definitely, you could say we've had some wins, but along the way that we're lucky, one of the lifestyle blocks hit right at the right time of COVID, and residential land went through the roof. But all the way along, the only way we could justify buying those lifestyle blocks was for Chloe, once again, which I've probably caused some close tensions in our marriage, loading her up with Wagyu calves and all sorts of other calves, and then well overstocking these lifestyle blocks with calves. But that's always got us through those tight patches where we've overextended. The share milking business could make this, but to get that next little 10% to make sure we hit our targets, it was just blood, sweat and tears, and get out there and, often one of the lifestyle blocks we were, finishing at 6 o'clock at night on the normal farm and then going and feeding calves in the dark. That was part of it. Always tidied the properties up, but yeah, so that was just something a bit different. We've had a bit of shares, but I suppose the key thing for the lifestyle block was that so many of these dairying, like contract milking, shed milking businesses create cash, and you've got to have somewhere to put that. Because if you don't have somewhere to put that cash, I've always lived by the fact that if you put money in the bank, that doesn't capture inflation. So that's probably been a driver for me all along, is that to have it into something that captures that inflation as it goes along.
Do you have any more questions out there?
I just think on that opportunity thing, there's a thing called the RAS effect, and so it's when you buy a new car and you drive down the road and you see the new car everywhere all of a sudden, you never noticed it before. When you figure out where it is you want to be in the next 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years, you get a clear picture of that. The RAS effect comes into play there too. So you won't like in an event like this, if you look around, you'll see there's plenty of opportunity for employers, and employers there's plenty of opportunity for employees. Now we don't want to go stealing each other from the people, but if that person's looking for an opportunity, this is where the RAS effect can come into play, and you just strike up a conversation with the right person and find that your goals align, so you get this awesome equity partnership, and away you go. And so if you are clear on your outlook for the next few years, then you will find that the steps, what opportunities used to walk in front of you, you never used to notice them for what they were, now they stand out. But the thing is, don't be afraid to take them when they do stand out. Just have a go, just back yourself. I think we're probably guilty of not backing ourselves enough. And just figure it out if you don't know. You'll soon learn.
Can I squeeze a question in? I'm going to ask each of you what things, like all these you've got to where you are through directly or indirectly through partnerships with other people. What things do you need to be aligned on in a successful partnership, and what do you not have to be not aligned with?
Anyone?
Yeah,
Same values.
I think you definitely got to have the same strategy, got to be heading in the same direction. Like for me, it was obviously the parents. I brought into their low cost system, we brought into their low cost system, so we're both heading in the same direction. And then we've just benefited from being able to leverage off their equity really.
Closing values. So I suppose we were fortunate enough with the two brothers that we came in that family was really important, and that was something that was really important to us. The home farm, they're coming up on 150 years on their property, and it's seen many land use changes through that time. And I suppose it comes into something that I did say to John the other day, that sometimes when I say it, it sounds cheesy, but for me, a lot of what I do in dairy farming, and people ask me why, is legacy. So although I came from a family that was in a different sector, in a retail sector from a long time ago in Wellington, what I've found is that that legacy was really important to me, but also to make sure that I get into something which was, I suppose, dairy farming. That meant that we could continue that legacy. Our family business was sold, the money was spread up, and I recently went back and looked at the growth on that money since it was sold and put into cash, and it's flitted into next to nothing across 2 or 3 generations. And I think what farming does allows you to create a business, one that for Chloe and I we've talked a lot about is, and there'll be people here that are probably about to leave, and there's no greater, if you can get yourself to farm ownership, there's no greater retirement tool. The farm, you can put a shin walker on, it can keep earning throughout your retirement, it can be handed on to the next generation. And I suppose it is, although cheesy, like for me, the legacy of building a farming business is quite important.
That's a great answer. Okay, we're going to call this session to a close shortly. Are there any more burning questions out there?
Thanks for sharing your stories, guys. Just a question around the next generation that you're seeing coming through your own businesses. What plans have you got to help them as you've been helped previously?
So we've got 3 ex-managers which are now lower order from our Shenwood career. Those people I saw potential in, so I did the same to them that my boss did to me. I gave them 5 calves, which became 10 calves, and then we let them come back into the herd until they wanted to realise that asset. One of them went and brought a cow straight away. But they learned, once they brought the new cow, that how much money they'd lost over the hole, and they drove it off the lot. So I just, the first thing how do you find out if the person's worth investing in as far as that? Everyone's different, everyone's got different drivers, but I just always ask new employees about where they're going to be, if they want to be in the same place in 12 months as they are now. And so before we talk about farm KPIs, we sort of develop their own personal KPIs, and then that gives them something to focus on so they feel like they're winning while they come through our business. I just don't like the idea of employing people and letting them stagnate, and just I'm not wired like that, and I just sort of challenge. Not everyone's up to being challenged, but the staff members that do enjoy it, they get a lot out of it. So there's a lot of personal growth, and some of them don't realise until they go to the next opportunity. The young Indian fella rang me up all excited because he knew more than the manager, and he was supposed to be the junior head manager. It sort of shows that it's worth it at the end of the day. But that's what I do.
Yeah, probably very similar. But we'll like to talk a lot about with our guys around the basics of financials. Try and teach them from it. Some of them have no idea of what the opportunities are. Whether it's using your KiwiSaver to buy your first home, that might be their goal that they want, or whether the opportunities to come and be a share walker eventually. I definitely I talk about it a lot. Once we get our debt back under control, it'd be great to bring on and do similar and grow our business the same way that we've been able to grow our business partners. Because there's only so many hours in the day that one person can do. So if you can grow, it's the same. I suppose we're going to use the same philosophy that the Paul's used with us as that day when we sat down and I tried to buy his cows, and he said, and the advisor said, don't split the pie, grow the pie. So I suppose that's where we can grow with people.
Yeah, I guess the same as Ben with that. We just focus on paying back debt and getting into a reasonable position ourselves, and then who knows what might come up. Definitely keen to support people with showing the interest and showing the keenness, I guess.
Look, that seems like a really good spot to finish it. I think the great thing, and Ben alluded to it, is we're not competing against each other in the dairy industry. We can support each other. There's not that scarcity mentality. We can all grow together. We don't have to grow at the expense of other people. And that's exactly what these guys have done. They've grown with other people. They've had relationships that have worked. They've got track records, so the banks, ASB in this case, have been happy to back them. So I think that's one of the lessons we've learned. But I'm sure these guys will tell you even more secrets if you wanted to approach them afterwards. I think it was Ben, I can't remember exactly who told me, but he used to ring up people out of the dairy exporter to get advice from. Yeah, it was Ben, I think. So that's the sort of drive you need, the other sort of opportunities that are out there, and people that never, in this industry, they don't mind sharing because the competition's offshore, it's not here in New Zealand. So that's the fabulous thing about our industry. So
I've just got a couple of thank yous to make, and just remind everyone that Side's coming up in Timaru on Tuesday and Wednesday next week. There's still plenty of spaces. There's some great speakers. Emma Twigg speaking. 2 or 3. Cameron Vagry. Ben Watson. Abby's here, actually, my share milker, and she's running Side this year, so she can give you anything. But take advantage of it, because she was a bit worried that Pasture someone might have stole some of her people who would have gone to Side, but I assured her that wasn't the case. And just remember to bring your lanyards and drop them off at the end there to Anne. And feedback forms in the back of your. But I think we've got someone officially going to round up the day, have we? Or is that my job? I'm doing it. Oh, look, I think we'll said most things for the others. Thanks very much to these panelists. It's really impressive to come up here and share and talk. It's not easy talking in front of a crowd like this, but really appreciate it. Pete and Emma, this is a magnificent property. You should be very proud of what you're doing here. Your figures are outstanding. They really are a credit to you, and something that people can aim at. And I think you are really a poster boy for what the Pasture Summit's trying to do. You're just doing the simple stuff well, not worrying about the technology, still using tail paint, and not that there's anything wrong with the technology, but once you understand the basics, then you can bring in the technology, and I think you're just doing a fantastic job and just doing the basics really, really well. So all credit to you. Thank you to, again, ASB and Terry and Zed, and to our sponsors up there on the board. I'm sure you can all see them, and look, we couldn't do it without them, so thank you very much. Terrific. Cheers. Safe trip home.